behalf of the Rotary Club of Tallahassee, I would like to welcome you to the 11th annual Roast and Toast. And I would be remiss if, before I proceed, in not recognizing the efforts of Westminster Oaks and the McGuire Center. Don Wilson and I were debating how many roasts have been here. We know it's at least 5. And this is just such a wonderful venue, and beyond that, the staff, the efforts that the staff makes, make this a tremendous venue, and I'd like to just acknowledge Westminster Oaks. Our invocateur for this evening will be Rotarian Jim Dencalcy. Jim.
We take this moment to give thanks for this heartfelt gathering of friends and family, for the food and laughs we're about to have, and for the money from this roast, which will enable us to continue to do good here in Tallahassee and around the world. We give thanks for the goodwill and better friendships our club has fostered. And may that increase with the fun from this evening together. We give special thanks to Terry and those previously who have been willing to be roasted in service above self. Amen.
I need to correct one omission from the program, and that is one of our sponsors was inadvertently left out of the program, and that is a man whose life has epitomized service to our country and certainly to Rotary, retired Lieutenant Colonel James Ryan. Thanks, Jim. So tonight we're going to enjoy an evening of good food, good drink, good fellowship, and good fun. I think most importantly, though, we're going to have the satisfaction of knowing that our contributions to this roast are going to continue this ripple effect of good in the world. Here are just a few examples of projects that either have been started or sustained by funds from past roasts. Disabled youngsters enjoy a touch of the outdoors at our Rotary Youth Camp. And just as importantly, their caregivers who have a 24/7 job of that caregiving are provided a respite from those intense responsibilities. School children at Riley Elementary School acquire and develop the love of reading through our Reading Pals program. Students throughout Leon County who would not otherwise have adequate nutrition over the weekends are provided meals through our backpacking program. Single parents and their children have a haven at the Hope Community, Tallahassee's only shelter for families. And water projects in India, Mexico, and Haiti have provided clean water to literally tens of thousands of citizens. The Roast and Toast, as Jim said, is the major source of funding for our club's project. Your support here is greatly appreciated. Your contributions will have an effect long after the memories of tonight's roast fade. Thank you for your presence tonight and for your generosity. We are honored tonight to have Judge Terry Lewis as our roastee, and we're equally honored to have Justice Major Harding, who will serve as Master of Ceremonies for this evening, and the program will begin after dinner. Thank you very much.
We have 4 remarkable and wonderful speakers, and the first speaker is William Corry. Now, Bill Corry graduated from Gordon Military Academy in 1965 and the University of South Florida in 1969, and from the FSU College of Law in 1973. He set up a law practice, renting space, interestingly, from Ruby Diamond on College Street. And during the course of the ensuing years, he and Phil Padovano and Terry Lewis and others practiced law with or near each other. Phil, the podium is yours.
please the court? Perhaps not so much. Thanks. Thank you, Major. If it was only 38 years, that'd make me younger than Terry, which would be okay with me. So, I'm going to take everybody down a little memory lane here. Major touched on it a little bit, but before we start, where did the gray come from? I mean, Terry has to retire from being a circuit judge before he starts to look old enough to be a circuit judge. It just popped up, and then Fran confided in me that he's been having her do the coloring. And then he got a haircut, looked real nice. Last week it was kind of shaggy looking, looked more retired than tonight. But anyway, in early 1974, after passing the bar by some miracle, I did hang out my shingle in an upstairs loft across from the old Florida Theater on College Avenue. And Ruby Diamond would send Smiley Bruce by every month to collect the rent, which was only $150. But there were some months we didn't quite have it. And Stuart Parsons was already there, so he would kind of make up the shortage for us. And in 1975, and I was hoping he would get here, but the notorious Larry Williams from Defuniak Springs joined us and hung his shingle out next to mine and Stuart's. Larry's now a gunster, causing mischief up there and at the legislature tonight. But then in the fall of 1976, another baby lawyer called me and said, "Can I come too?" And I asked Terry, I said, "Well, can you help us with the rent?" He said, "Probably not much, but I'll do my best." So we said, "Well, come on." So Terry came over and hung his shingle out with the rest of us. And I'll tell you, none of the three of us had a clue on what we were doing. We really didn't. And I remember the first morning Terry came to work. Now, I'm not a morning person. I go in early, real early, get my coffee, and as Stephanie says, to work on my karma. I am not to be messed with. So I'm at 7 a.m., I'm at my desk, and I've got my coffee, and everything's right with the world, and I hear somebody coming up these stairs, this long, long flight of stairs. I got up there so my dad couldn't get up there to find me. But it takes a while, and I'm thinking, who the hell is that? And I'm hearing, I'm going, that's disgusting. Who can be that damn happy this early in the morning? And in walks Terry P. Lewis. I said, "Oh, Lord." I said, go in the kitchen and get some coffee and find something to do. He looks at me and he goes, "I don't like coffee." I said, "What? I thought you were from Perry." He goes, "I am. I like the way it smells, but I don't like the way it tastes." He goes, "I like hot tea." I said, "Buddy, you're out of luck. We don't have any hot tea." Now, I worked construction in Perry in high school. I never met anybody that drank hot tea. Anybody. So, within 10 minutes of his first day at work, he already had 3 strikes against me. He's messing with me before 9 o'clock.
11.
He's got this annoying whistled, and he's still whistling back there somewhere in the office. And I just can't believe this. And he doesn't like coffee. But anyway, somehow we made it through the first day without me already evicting him. So a couple days goes by, and he sees my tennis bag. He goes, "Do you play tennis?" I said, "Yeah." He goes, "Well, I play tennis." I said, "Perry has a tennis court?" He says, "Yeah, you kind of navigate around the potholes, but yeah." So a couple days later, I said, "Well, let's go to Winthrop Park at lunch." Terry says, "We'll go by Whataburger and get our hamburgers." We're eating our hamburgers while we're warming up, and he actually hit the tennis ball. I was skeptical. I think he might have even beat me. So anyway, we finish playing, we go to leave. Remember this, Terry? He had some kind of weird little foreign car, Fiat or something. Anyway, it wouldn't start. That's another thing. Every man I knew in Perry had a pickup truck. He's got this weird little European car. I go, "We probably need to jump the battery." Fran, do you remember? So we need to jump it off. We need to jump the battery. I go, "Where's your battery?" He goes, "I don't know." "Are you serious?" I said, "Are you sure you're from Perry?" Anyway, we find the battery, we get it started, we get the car started, and I'm thinking, this is just too weird. So, in our practice, if you walked in our door, we represented you. I mean, criminal, family law, civil, probate, real property, I think anything but tax. So I walk back in the kitchen one day, and there's just vegetables everywhere, piled up, corn, okra, tomatoes, everything. It looks like the food bank. And I asked one of the staff, where are all these vegetables coming from? They go, "It's Terry's clients." I go, "Well, that's great. That's great." They went, "Yeah, but they're not paying any fees." I said, "Well, we were the healthiest law firm in town." So, all right, fast forward to 1978. I had run into Bill Padovano, absolutely brilliant attorney. And somehow I hooked him into, two of us bought property on Calhoun Street and set up a practice. Terry came and Larry Williams came. So by then, we had grown our criminal defense practice pretty well. So we were getting some clients. Phil was brilliant. We were doing well. Terry was keeping us in vegetables. We had so much fun. It was constant jokes. I remember the day I sat at my desk and I opened the drawer to get a pen and I almost grabbed a snake. Seriously, a live snake. And then I remember when Terry locked the pigeon in Phil's new BMW. I think it was the first time I ever saw Phil lose his judicial temperament. And Terry was still playing tennis every day at lunch. That's why he got to be just right under a pro tennis player. But we wouldn't let him. He'd come back to the office after playing tennis and he'd be drenched, soaking wet, and take a shower. We said, "You're not leaving those nasty clothes in our bathroom." So there's a nail out on the back porch where he could hang them. You knew this was coming, didn't you? And they would dry out. So one day, I can't remember why I was out there, but I walk out there, and there's Terry's clothes, wet, they're dry now, the sun's dried them out. And there in his tidy-whitey jockey shorts, a mama wren had built a nest. I swear this is the truth. A mama wren had built a nest, and I go, well, this will be interesting. What's Terry gonna do? So I go out there the next day, and all the clothes are gone, but the jockey shorts are still there, the nest is there. So the mama wren lays eggs. Seriously, Terry waits until all the baby wrens have hatched and flown away before he wore those jockey shorts. But all the fun ended in 1989 when Terry was elected to Leon County Court, and of course in 1998, as Major said, Governor Childs appointed him to the Circuit Court. And then Stephanie and I were talking the other night. We can remember every night coming home and seeing Terry on every news channel. Any news channel you turn to, there's Terry P. Lewis from Perry. And it's a 2000 presidential election recount, Bush versus Gore. Of course, you went the wrong direction on that, Terry. And to me, yeah, there's so many things that he's done. It's hard to keep up with everything, but to me, besides the presidential recount, teaching judges how to be judges, there's nobody as perfect as Terry Lewis to teach judges how to be judges, and I hope he's going to continue doing that. And I think the lesson to take away from all this is you don't need to know where your battery is to be extremely successful in life. I mean, really. So congratulations, my friend. Well done. We're very, very proud of you.
Thank you. I gave each of these speakers a time limit. And I did not have any idea that I would need to use it. Just in the event that I do. Our next speaker is Janet Ferris. And I hope you noticed, Janet, you were the only one with the title of honorable. Well, in preparation for this evening, I asked each of the roasters to provide me with a brief bio so I could introduce them appropriately. And I received from Judge Ferris an email with a document attached entitled Resume. Well, interesting that use of that term, and I wondered what's the difference between a resume and a biography. Well, like I did with adjunct when I saw he was an adjunct professor, I went to the dictionary and it said a resume is a brief written account of personal education and professional qualifications and experience. And so I opened it and I learned a new definition of brief. Well, I had to read through the whole thing to determine that she had received her Bachelor of Arts degree, summa cum laude, with distinction in psychology, Phi Beta Kappa, in 1973 from Boston University. And the College of Liberal Arts. She received her law degree from Florida State University in 1976, and she has served in many capacities in state government before her service on the circuit bench here in Tallahassee. Her brief resume reflects that she did many teachings, many speaking, and many publishings with a strong concern for the welfare of children. In addition to the serving on the court with Terry Lewis, she is married to retired DCA Judge Phil Padovano, who, as we have heard, practiced law with Terry for a number of years. Janet, the podium is yours.
Oh, God, you can't catch a break. I'm one of them women widows. Okay. So. I'll explain this in a minute. I can't see everybody, even though we can make somebody mad with this little camera thing here, but can y'all see? And these people can't see it. All right. All right, I hear the giggling because this is the family division crown and the felony division rose. So you just have to go with it because I couldn't find the right one. So anyway, we all get these. I'm here tonight, however, representing the premier judges organization in the great state of Florida. This is the Florida Average Judges Association, which we affectionately refer to as FAJA. We have lofty guiding principles, which we identify in Latin because Latin is very cool. So these awesome words here, veritas, who went to Harvard? Truth, justitia, justice, rectum, that, you know, really, right? We're the doctors, I know there is one. Mediocris, average. Yeah. So we've got our seal with this awesome organization. As you probably guessed, 99.99% of all the judges in Florida are members of our organization. And our goal is, of course, 100% participation. Occasionally one outlier, one renegade gets away, so to speak, and sadly, Terry Lewis is one of those people. Although we like Terry a lot, we could not grant him membership because he consistently failed to meet the FAJA membership criteria. We nonetheless wanted to be kind and generous to Terry, from Perry, upon his auspicious, yeah, really, we called him TFP because we had to have, the secret name. We wanted to be nice to him because this is a big occasion for poaching or sauteing or whatever the heck we're doing here, but I feel compelled to explain why he remained an outcast for his entire judicial career. There are 47 criteria for membership in FAJA, but because you all look like very impatient people, I'm just going to discuss 3 of the most important. Members, number 1, must be regular people. Members, number 2, must properly execute their judicial duties. And 3, members must have an appropriate judicial temperament. So why did Terry fail? First, on being a regular person, FAJA requires that member judges must be like most other humans. They must be enthusiastic couch potatoes, must not read anything more challenging than the Tallahassee Democrat, which is the gold standard for unchallenging reading this mastery of the great hobbies, and that's capital G, capital H, great hobbies like stamp collecting, palm reading, time travel, snake skin collecting, which is very popular in Terry's homeland of Paris, watching golf on TV, or my personal favorite, shopping. Members must not possess special talents or speak foreign languages. So how did Terry fare on this criteria, being a regular person? Our extensive investigation established that for many years, Terry never even sat down, much less on a couch, and regularly exercised outside. Even if we looked the other way on his regular tennis game with very fancy people, some of whom are in this room, Dr. Cognetto. Oh no, that wasn't enough for Terry. He had to play in actual tournaments in the age division of 60 to 100 years old. And he occasionally would actually beat a 90-year-old woman. And that wasn't enough. Then he decided to play basketball at lunch. Sadly, our covert operations also found out that when he should have been laid out in the lazy boy watching CSI reruns, he was writing novels, and then he had the audacity to get them published. But that's not all. Oh no. He used the rest of his free time to play guitar, brew beer in his bathtub, travel the world with Fran, and walk the dog even. And as for foreign languages, he could actually speak Taylor County. It was amazing because even the Navajo code talkers couldn't understand. So clearly, he was an overachiever and a show-off, as our president would say, sad. Next, on the proper execution, and not that kind of his judicial duties, that is defined by our organization as showing up at the courthouse right before noon, getting orders out within a year or two of a hearing, artfully dodging requests from other judges to assist with trials. You also had to leave early, and you had to generally be cranky. Where's that table in the back? I see those cranky people. To establish your judicial independence, personal freedom, autonomy, and fierce right of self-determination, no volunteering for committees, projects, or other stuff. You had to be forced to do those things. So what did Terry do? Oh yeah, he arrived early, worked hard all day, helped other judges, left late, and walked down the halls whistling. As Bill Corry kind of alluded to, whistling is weird anywhere. Whistling in the halls of justice is probably worse than doing it past a graveyard. He was just so lighthearted. He was so cheerful, so contented. Such a bad example. And to add insult to injury, Terry volunteered year after year for everything, helping his colleagues, serving on committees, teaching new judges, teaching old judges, teaching law students. He would teach anything, whether he knew anything about it or not. Quite honestly, his willingness to help was just not normal. No laziness, no crankiness, no hiding, no subterfuge, no cynicism. Fail on this criteria too. Finally, on judicial temperament, we thought, well, maybe there'd be a chance. FAJA defines this as at least one tantrum, threat, screaming fit, contempt citation, or gavel whack per week. Since I worked for law enforcement for many years, I volunteered to go undercover to monitor Terry's court proceedings. I watched for weeks in a variety of disguises. I dressed inappropriately. I set off my cell phone repeatedly. I paid babies to scream during trials. I told criminal defendants that they would get a more lenient sentence if they cursed at Terry, tossed a chair across the room, which they did, and result, nothing. Not a single tantrum. No, I'm the judge and you're a roach. No, I'm going to put you under the courthouse. Not even a disgusted or dramatic ejection of the crying babies. He was calm and judicious. And during the 2000 presidential election litigation, which when he had the opportunity to show the world what judicial temperament is all about in Florida and what crazy badasses Florida judges are. Terry Lewis was dignified, intelligent, prepared, and he took control of the chaos without screaming or crying. He was regal. He was awe-inspiring. What was he thinking? Epic fail. So you can all see why Terry was not inducted into our awesome organization. But we're sympathetic to the plight of those individuals who, like Terry, march to the beat of their own drummer and just can't be average. We therefore wish to present Terry with a little gift as his butt is kicked out onto the bucolic seas of the retirement ocean. So, just so you know, at our investitures, which is when we're sworn in as judges, various organizations give us the basic tools for the job. They give us a robe and a gavel, and then the state buys the crown. So tonight, we make the only exception in Fodge's history to present Terry with the retirement tools we give to all of our retiring members, an appropriate outfit for grocery shopping at Publix or attending the old man's breakfast club. So Terry. This is a more casual crown than the one he wears around the house. The man, the myth, the judge.
Our next speaker is Benard Waxman. In response to my request for a brief bio from Bernie, I received the following quote: Florida State University, MA Humanities in Higher Education, a long time ago. Semicolon, BA Philosophy, a longer time ago. Work experience, FSU, 1974 to the present. Notable accomplishment, none. Honors and activities, see above. And then he said, I had the pleasure of knowing the Lewises since before I had to stand up when he entered the room. Well, despite that, we all know Bernie Waxman as director, long time, of the facility operations and event management for all of the FSU home athletic competitions. While he was a student at FSU, he earned 3 letters in track and field athletics, and he captained the 1972 squad. His wife Lisa is an FSU professor and head of interior architecture and design department. One thing Bernie did not disclose in his bio was that on April the 18th of this year, at an FSU opening night's performance of the Second City Comedy Group, without notice, he was called out of his seat and onto the stage to participate in an impromptu skit with the Second City Comedy Group. The reviews of that event raised considerably our expectations of his performance tonight. And I understand those reviews are likewise having cause for the administration at FSU to wonder if he's going to continue to work there. Bernie, the podium is yours.
Oh, prepare for disappointment, it's a part of life. I don't know about the rest of you, but this is really late for me. I don't know whose idea it was to have a 2-hour happy hour. I have a sneaking suspicion it was Terry's. Those of you that know him know he has a real passion for craft beer, microbreweries. It would be fair to say that the last bar that Terry passed was just after law school. Terry, congratulations on your retirement. When you think of a retiree, you think of somebody old. Terry, you're not old. But when you graduated from FSU as an undergraduate, a postage stamp cost 8 cents. A gallon of gas was 38 cents. You could buy a new car for $3,500. The average price of a new home was $32,000. And the average household income was $12,900. No wonder you couldn't afford your rent. A little sports note here. Secretariat won the Triple Crown. And nationally, that was the year that the Supreme Court rendered its decision on Roe v. Wade. When you graduated law school, the Apple I computer was introduced. NASA introduced the Space Shuttle Enterprise, which is now in a museum in New York. You are old, Terry. And we had a president that year that told the nation that I'm not a crook. Some things have changed dramatically, the cost of goods. Some things have remained the same. We recently had a president that tweeted that he hasn't done anything wrong. I'll never understand politics. In preparing for tonight's roast, Major Harding shared the rules of engagement for a civil roast. The document was 5 pages long, and I'm afraid it eliminated just about everything that could be fun. Some of the things were no inside jokes, be respectful, nothing too offensive, and the real killer was you have to talk about topics that your audience is familiar with. And that killed me because I wanted to talk about his books. Terry started writing as a hobby, but it didn't take him long to see the financial benefits. Recently, Terry was able to take the royalties from his 3 books, and he booked a vacation for he and Fran at one of their favorite spots in the world. He asked Fran to guess where. She had no idea, so Terry gives her a hint, says, "If the city starts with a P." Fran absolutely lit up. Paris is one of their favorite cities. She was a little disappointed when they ended up in Perry, Florida, Terry's hometown, but they were able to cover all the expenses. Good thing writing's just a hobby and not their principal source of income. My wife Lisa and I have been exchanging Christmas gifts with Fran and Terry for many years. In 1997, the year Terry's first book, Conflict of Interest, was published, we received an inscribed copy to my good friends Marty and Lisa, signed Terry Lewis. Each year since 1998, we've received a copy with the inscription, "To my good friends, a blank," and then Terry Lewis. We got the hint, and we've been regifting distributors for his books for years. The first lucky recipient in 1998 was a Dr. Jim Jones, longtime history professor at FSU. I'm sure all of you have heard of him. Jim will turn 88 next month. He loves Terry's book. As a matter of fact, he said that conflict of interest was life-changing for him. A former insomniac, Dr. Jones has been convincing on conflict of interest for 7,665 consecutive nights. Now on chapter 29 of 30, he's eager to get a copy of Privileged Information. That's Terry's second book, for those of you out there that aren't on their Christmas exchange list. Both Terry and Fran are avid readers of both fiction and nonfiction. When you walk into their house, you're greeted by bookcase after bookcase. Bookcase 1 and 2 are filled with fiction, and you guessed it, shelf after shelf of copies of Conflict of Interest and Privileged Information. Bookcase 3 begins the nonfiction section, and here you can find the classic Delusional by Terry Lewis, which is rumored to be autobiographical. Speaking of delusional, Terry is a self-proclaimed gifted musician, and excuse me while I reach for my clicker here, and let's see if we can, if those of you that can see the TV, there's Terry. We were on a vacation with the Lewises recently, and there were 6 of us that were being entertained by Terry playing the guitar. While he was playing the guitar, we decided we would play Name That Tune as it was playing. Some of you are probably familiar with the old game. After 2 hours of nonstop playing, the final score was 0-0. We couldn't get a final score. Terry was politically active. Terry was, you'll note the TV, Terry was politically active prior to being a judge, a proponent of equal rights and child labor laws. As a father, he practiced both. I don't know if you can see that up there, but that has Angie pushing the car while Terry is getting in it, and he's saying, Angie, you push, I'll steer. Terry was an outstanding athlete in high school. He was an unbelievable basketball talent and had the opportunity to pursue his basketball dream after high school. Terry had a tryout with the NBA. Unfortunately, he was distracted by a fan in the stands, and that allowed his opponent to get by him and easily get a layup, and probably cost Terry his NBA career. Rumor has it that it was you in the stands, Franz. Don't be too concerned. It worked well for his opponent. Those of you that follow the NBA know that that's James Harden right there, and he made a career for himself with the Houston Rockets, and it worked out well for Terry because it forced him out of athletics. As we all know the rest of the story, well, we kind of know the rest of the story. In a recent podcast, Terry was asked by the host when he knew he wanted to go into law as a career and why. Well, without a moment's hesitation, Terry explained that as a kid, his family used to watch Perry Mason. They watched it all the time, and that's when his love affair with law began. His favorite character was the district attorney Hamilton Berger. Berger did not win a single case in 10 seasons on the show. Fortunately for Terry, he was elected county judge before he could seriously challenge Berger's record. Terry's a very accomplished tennis player, but in his early days he had a bit of a temper. I got this picture. This was, I believe, what Major was alluding to when Major called Terry shot out. He mellowed with time, and instead of breaking rackets, he merely tossed them. Terry, that's about as mean as I can be about you. It's a privilege to call you friend. You inspire us all as a husband, a parent, a professional, an individual that lives life with passion and purpose. And for this, you have shown us the way, and we say thank you.
Our next speaker is Charles W. Ehrhardt, more appropriately known to most as Chuck. He's been on the faculty at FSU College of Law since 1967. He must be old. That's over 50 years. Well, his bio reflects that he's also been a visiting professor at the University of Georgia Law School and my alma mater, Wake Forest Law School. When I saw visiting professor, like I did for some of the other words that came across my mind during this event, I went into the dictionary, and it defined a visiting professor as, quote, one invited to join or attend an institution, such as a university, for a limited time, end quote. I guess those last words sent a message. Chuck got his BS, and for our purposes tonight, that means Bachelor of Science, from Iowa State University in 1962, and his JD from Iowa State University. I got 1962 here again, but I must have misread that.
64.
64. He taught at the National Judicial College in Reno. I went to that in 1971. Were you on the faculty then?
I don't remember. Might have been.
Join the crowd. Well, he also taught federal district at the Federal District Judicial Center in Washington. He's widely published in law review articles. He's written a book on evidence that has been cited over 500 times in appellate courts. Wow. He is unquestionably the guru of evidence, not only in Florida, but also nationwide. And in looking up the definition of guru, I learned that guru was any leader who is highly regarded by a group of followers, quote, colon, sometimes used derisively. Chuck, I hope that does not apply to this evening. For almost 20 years, Chuck served as the FSU representative to the NCAA, the ACC, and in 2007 he was inducted into the Florida State Sports Hall of Fame. He's married to Judy, an artist with a specialty in jewelry, has 2 sons, one a lawyer here in Tallahassee and one with Facebook in Seattle. He also has a stepdaughter who lives here. Chuck, the podium is yours.
Mr. Chief Justice Harding, Mr. Chief Justice Grimes, judges, friends, and particularly Judge Lewis. It's an honor to be here tonight. I've known Terry since he started law school at Florida State and followed him and fortunately been a friend of his for 40 years. But before I came tonight, I wanted to be sure that I realized what his career had been. So I immediately went to the resource source for all high school students and college students when they want to write a paper, Wikipedia, the go-to site. And I had forgotten, and I'm not sure I knew, that he had spent time in Australia and had a connection with the police force in Australia. And he was highly honored in that position. But apparently, something happened, and Chief Justice Harding, I'm not sure the Florida bar knew about this. He was charged with corruption. And in Australia, look at Wikipedia. He was given a choice of 10 years imprisonment or deportation back to the United States. He got back here and started his literary and artistic career. He won, Terry Lewis, look at Wikipedia, won the Songwriter of the Year award for R&B music. Right? Yeah, that's what Wikipedia says. We've heard about his thrillers, and by the way, he explained to me the difference between a mystery and a thriller, and I didn't know that. I'm sure everybody else knows. I read them all the time, and I've never understood the difference. In a mystery, the murder occurs at the beginning of the book, then they try to solve who did it, and in a thriller, it occurs at the end, right? Well, but I was one who early recognized his bent for fiction. We have essay exams in law school. first essay exam I read, I said, but he's gonna go a long ways with fiction. He's published 3, I am a fan. I read all day for a living and teach. And at night, I read to escape and entertainment. And I read mysteries and thrillers and that sort of thing. And I have read Terry's. And at some point, I told Terry, if you ever want to use as one of your characters a tall, gray-haired, mustache, loud evidence professor, I can be a villain, I can be whatever role you want to put me in. And you know what? His 4th legal thriller, there is a handsome, white-haired, loud evidence professor. And you know what that character did? This is true. Caused that novel never to be published. So Terry, being wise, decided this is fact. Sent me an advance copy of his newest novel. Justice Harding, are you aware of this?
No, he's not signed that one.
No, this is the advance copy. It's not out yet.
Oh, wow.
It is a thriller, but it's no longer a legal thriller. The main characters are Paul Revere and George Washington. It's a Revolutionary War thriller, one sure to grip this modern generation. What's the title of it, Terry? Yeah, he had the title in here. I've been fortunate enough to be around judges for quite some time. Lawyers and judges, to keep up, need continuing education. And I, in addition to being at the law school, am involved in continuing legal education and continuing education for judges. And I know through that Terry is well respected by his peers on the judiciary. He is generally soft-spoken in the courtroom, deliberative on the bench. He's known as being polite and unflappable in the courtroom. I have observed that firsthand, and I hope everybody will do this. You all probably can get out of it if you want. I voluntarily, I was called for jury duty, and I served on a jury. I didn't want to get out of it. And it was very, very interesting and helpful to me. And you know who the judge was? Terry, in that case. And it was a criminal case, possession of drugs. And after the case is over, what the judge says to the jury is something to the effect that, thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, you've been very important to the disposition of this case. We appreciate your service very much. You're free to leave and go on about your business. That's what he said to my jury. Except for Professor Ehrhardt. And everybody in the jury whips around looking at me. They don't really know, we don't know each other. And I don't know what's going on. And so the jury leaves. I'm sitting there in the jury box. The quiet Judge Lewis says to me, Professor, during one of those bench conferences, when the jury couldn't hear what was going on, there was this argument on whether a certain piece of evidence was admissible. And here's what the prosecutor said, and here's what the defense counsel said, and here's the way I ruled. And we all just want to know who was right. I'm no dummy. I'm in the courtroom. What do I say? Judge, I affirm. But I've had the privilege for a number of years. Justice Harding referred to the fact that there is something called the Advanced Judicial College, which is part of the Florida statewide system for judicial education. And this is a specialized college. All sorts of different courses are offered. And Terry was the dean of that college, the head of that college, for a number of years, which indicates the respect that his peers have for Terry. He does have one problem in teaching, and that is he's generally rather soft-spoken. And we were in some big ballroom, and they've got there's probably one back there, these soundproof curtains that come out. You can split a big ballroom into various smaller rooms. And we were in this ballroom teaching together, and they want us to have microphones. I don't need microphones. Terry might. And we taught for an hour and a half that morning, took a break, and immediately the powers that be came over and said, you can't use your microphones anymore. The Chief Justice is in the room next to you, and his students can't hear anything but you guys talking about evidence. So we took off our microphones, taught the rest of the morning without microphones. They came over at lunchtime and said, you're banished to the far corner of the hotel because while they can't hear Terry, all they can hear is you, Ehrhardt. Being a judge in Tallahassee is different than being a judge in any other city in the state. Being a judge in any other city of the state is pretty routine. You've got an assignment, whether it's family, whether it's criminal, whether it's civil. You do the same thing for at least a couple of years at a time. The reason that being a judge in Tallahassee is different is because Tallahassee is the capital of Florida. And if you want to sue the state of Florida, you got to sue them in Tallahassee. You got to sue them in Tallahassee. And that means that very high profile, controversial cases are heard by judges in Tallahassee. That if you're a judge in Orlando, Tampa, Miami, Fort Lauderdale, name it, you would never get close to. And these are high profile cases, get high publicity. And Terry has had more than his share of those cases. He had a very high profile abortion case. We've heard about Bush v. Gore. I know judges in other parts of the state, you know, South Florida can't count ballots. No, judges down there were ducking cases, Bush v. Gore cases. Nobody wanted to take them. Because they're high profile, you got to run for election, and all you're going to do is tick off half the electorate. But Terry willingly never ducked a case. Abortion, high profile. About the last thing I remember he did was to the gerrymandering case for congressional districts. He got to draw the congressional districts for the northern part of Florida. He got to draw the congressional districts for the northern district of Florida. Major, did you disagree with were you on the court that disagreed with Terry on that?
I was a lawyer and he disagreed with me.
But I still have on my door at the law school newspapers used to, when they were still newspapers, used to have political cartoons in the newspapers. Right when he was deciding that case, maybe the last political cartoon the Democrat ever had in it was a picture of Terry standing in the middle of the state of Florida with a red spray can and a blue spray can, and the title of the cartoon is not gerrymandering, it's Terrymandering. No, I mean, and Terry had that in his chambers in the Leon County Courthouse. I'm sure it's in his home. That was a high honor, I think. Terry, I'm not a very good roaster. My first wife of 44 years vetoed a couple things I was going to say. And I've come to realize that the best way to a 44-year-old marriage is 2 words, yes, dear.
Amen.
That's right. But to close, most of us here either know or know of Dino Kitchen. And when I was getting ready to do this, I looked online just to find some more information other than Wikipedia stuff about Australia and whatnot. And I think it was in the New York Times. This is true. You can Google it and come up with the article. But it was during his Bush v. Gore case. Dino Kitchen was quoted, and I think this is a very appropriate quote. If they draw lots in all those tough cases, Terry Lewis is the unluckiest sucker in the world. No, because he got them. He'd handled them well when many other judges would have tried to duck him. He was an excellent judge. The Southern Literary Review, in reviewing Terry's, I'm not sure which book, I think it was the last one he published, had this to say about Terry. When the courtroom loses Terry, it may be the literary world's gain. Any careful reader of his novels will see the same meticulous attention to getting it right, both in content and style. Terry, you've done a great job as a judge and an author, and I'm proud to be here honoring you tonight. Thank you.
Well, I think our next speaker has already been adequately introduced. My wife Jane said that her mother used to say, they really wouldn't tease you if they did not love you. And it's obvious you are dearly loved. Terry, I'm going to turn the podium over to you. Don't mess it up.
Well, trying to get away?
It's an idea.
Well, it could have been worse. I'll say that. These guys were very creative, don't you think? Let's hear your hands. Many of you thinking, yeah, I mean, they took it too easy on me. I could have roasted that guy. I could have really embarrassed him. See, shaking hands, my son-in-law there.
I was told I wasn't allowed.
Yeah. Well, that's why you're out there and they're up here. They got classes. Now, I know it's traditional. It's traditional in these roasts for the roastie to get a few jabs in on the roasters in rebuttal. But you know, it's just not my nature to say bad things about people that I care about, and I'm just not comfortable with this sort of insult humor. But I guess I'll give it a try. Bill Corry. By the way, Bill, I really like a toupee. I mean, it's really good. It looks nice on you. Can't really tell. And first of all, you all realize, don't you, that just about everything he said is completely untrue. I mean, mildly entertaining perhaps, but not a shred of truth in any of that. Anything after Terry P. Lewis, I think. I first met Bill in 1975. I won't tell you the true facts here. I met Bill in 1975. I was interning with the state attorney's office. So I was in criminal court, and I'd see the attorneys come in, and I noticed this one attorney. And he was always on time, dressed really good. I mean, expensive-looking suits. The shoes were shined to perfection, hair neatly in place and everything. And his legal arguments were well-reasoned and even on occasion eloquent. And yeah, you're right, that wasn't Bill. Now, Bill was the one with the kind of longish dishwater blonde hair, wore the scuffy old cowboy boots and blue jeans. But he was also the one that seemed completely at ease in the courtroom. He got along well with the prosecutors and the defense attorneys, and he even had the self-confidence to banter with the judge. And those of you old enough to remember Judge John Rudd, you know that's like putting your head into the lion's mouth. So I was pretty impressed, and we became friends, and when I got ready to graduate, and here's what really happened. Bill said, hey, listen, you want to give it a try on your own? I got some office space that we can share, and I'll even cover the overhead for a few months till you get on your feet. Might even be able to throw you a few cases. It wasn't so I thought that sounded pretty good. So I did. I took him up on this offer, and I spent my early formative years in the practice of law under his watchful eye and with the benefit of his advice. And you know, Bill, I heard what Major said about some of your friends thinking you were cheap. You know, I think that I heard that nickname of alligator arms, and I think that's just completely accurate. But Bill, I also know you've got a huge heart and a very generous nature, because I've been the recipient. So I thank you for getting me off to a good start in this noble profession, and I thank you for your continued friendship. So Janet Ferris, my God, boy, that was the most creative thing I've heard in a long time. And I'll say this: Janet Ferris has never been outspoken. At least I've never witnessed anybody that could outtalk her. And I can also tell you that there are only two theories or strategies of arguing with Janet, and neither one of them works. Janet and I were, in fact, classmates at FSU, and I didn't know her then. But I could tell early on that she was extremely bright. I could tell from her answers in class and the way she conducted herself. She studied hard. So I did approach her maybe the first or second week of school, and I said, introduced myself and said, you know, maybe we could form a study group and help each other out. And she looked at me and she gave me what is now her classic warm smile and said, ain't gonna happen. Well, actually, she didn't say no. What she said was, I'll need to see your high school and college transcripts. So I detected early on that passive-aggressive tendency that she has displayed so well tonight. Janet, you are a wonderful friend, and I say this with deep affection. You have a problem. Seriously, Janet, I have enjoyed your sharp wit, your keen insight, your generous nature for many years, and I appreciate very much you sharing that wit with us tonight. So, Benard, Bernie Waxman. Yes, and Bernie, I also like your toupee. It's what we call the minimalist look. It fits you up. And all my friends, Bernie, I would say you are, in fact, the most stylish. But Bernie is a very modest person, with every reason to be so. You have heard about his long history with FSU athletics, which began with his undergraduate days when he was a member of the FSU track team. And in the 400-meter four-man relay, he was the fifth man. He was in charge of putting the baton away. One thing that wasn't mentioned about Bernie, though, is that he is an avid gardener. He'll put on this wide brim straw hat, put on his old clothes, get a shovel, go out in the yard and tell Lisa where to dig. And I asked him one time, Bernie, do you talk to your plants, to get them to grow? He said, no, but I yell at them. And I said, how's that work? He said, well, they still grow, but they sometimes end up troubled and curious. Seriously though, I know you've all seen the film, It's a Wonderful Life, and George Bailey's brother comes home and he sees that all the townspeople are coming in, putting money in the hat for George, having met a gym, and realizes all the friends he has, and he says, offers a toast, and he says, to my brother George, the richest man in town. And that's how I think of Bernie. I'm not finished. Well, there's no punchline here. Bernie's garnered a large circle of friends over the years because of his wit, his geniality, and his genuine concern for others. And to know him is to like him. And I consider myself blessed to be within that circle of Bernie. Thank you. And Chuck Ehrhardt. Mr. Evans. Many of the lawyers that are here tonight saw that Professor Ehrhardt was on the program and thought, worried a little bit. They were going to get a mini lecture on the hearsay rule. And having heard him speak, he probably thought that probably would have been better. He mentioned, now this is the guy that when he has trouble sleeping at night goes over the 801 exceptions or inclusions. No, he mentioned that I was one of his students, and what he didn't mention though was that I booked his course. And those of you know in law school, if you book a course, you get the highest grade in the class, which I did, except for the other 75%. No, what I did was what would be more aptly called a very thin pamphlet. And he told you about the jury trial. Let me tell you, there are two sides to every story. So look at this from my perspective. He's on the jury. I'm a fairly new judge. I'm doing a criminal trial, and here comes your former law professor, evidence on the jury. And you're ruling on evidence, objection, sustained, overruled. You're looking over there going, he gives me no sign. So yeah, when the trial was over, I called him up. I wanted to just run some things by and see how I did. So I asked him, what the evidence rulings I did, what did you think? And he said, yeah, I took note of all your rulings on the evidence. I have to tell you, you know nothing of the evidence. How you got out of law school as just judges is beyond me. And the teaching and the folks came over next door and said, hey, listen, y'all need to turn your microphones down. He said,
What microphone? I don't need a microphone.
True. He doesn't. But since probably the mid-1990s, I got involved in judicial education, and I think the first course, somebody said, listen, can you work with Professor Hart, maybe do some hypos or something? Professor Hart. But I did, and he was gracious enough to let me participate in that. And since then, I've had the honor and privilege to collaborate with Mr. Evans on several evidence courses over the years. As a matter of fact, we're going to do it again this month down in Orlando. And here's the formula. I come up with a hypothetical set of facts. I have absolutely no idea what the answer is, but I pose it, ask the judges, how would you rule? We get that, and then I go, Professor?
Well, I think...
He gives the right answer, and everybody's happy. It works out really good. So, Professor, you are in fact a scholar and a gentleman, and you have made me a better judge, a better teacher, and a better person. I thank you for honoring us tonight with your presence. So, last but not least, our roast master, Major Best Harding. Yeah, sit down. You're not going anywhere.
I'm over here
just hanging in the wings. Okay. Yes, sir. All right, I got you. So, 11 years ago, we had our first Rotary roast, as Major mentioned, and in fact, he was the roastee, and I was the MC or roast master. And I think, Major, having reversed the roles now, you will probably agree with me that it is better to give than to receive. And having witnessed your performance as MC tonight, consider not, I think, and I say this with all sincerity, that was a lot better.
I agree.
And we got the dates off a little wrong in terms of when I met Major, because he was the dean of the Judicial College when I became a judge. So I remember very well the first bit of advice and encouragement I got from Major was at the new judges school we went to. And it was on the second day, I think, and he pulled me off to the side and he put his arms around my shoulder and smiled in that fatherly, kindly manner that is at his core. And he said, whispered and said, "You know, Terry, this judge thing isn't for everybody." And later, you know, I would get some bad press on the case, and Major would console me and say, "Listen, you know, you open up the newspaper and you see your name in there and it's not associated with an obituary, it's good news." And you mentioned Bush Gore and corrective decisions and all that kind of stuff. But I remember, I got reversed by Major and his colleagues on the Supreme Court during that election litigation, and I saw him at Rotary after that, and he said, "Listen, Terry, you know, on the Supreme Court, we're not last because we're right because we're last." Okay, I can live with that. And he's continued with that advice and encouragement throughout the years, including tonight. And just before we came up here, he said, "Listen, we're going to be up there for a while. You might want to use the restroom." So, Major, you are a warm, wonderful human being, and you've been a great role model, a mentor, despite what I said in the inscription in the books, and a great friend. So I thank you very much for being the absolute master of me tonight. So in conclusion, I'm not done. I've been a Rotarian now for about 35 years. It's a great organization, and the Rotary Club of Tallahassee is a wonderful club, full of members who understand the motto, they serve, or they profit most who serve best. If you're looking for a way to be of service in your community, you might consider Rotary. There might be some stuff on your table that gives you information about that, but give me a call or call somebody you know in the club. We'll arrange for you to come to a meeting as our guest. Don't have to pay nothing. You'll see maybe if that's a good fit for you. We're always looking for good members. And I will repeat what Donald Park said earlier about the staff and administration here at Westminster Oaks. They're extremely accommodating and cooperative with us. Every year they've offered their space here. They give us such a deal that it increases the funds we raise from this event. And so I would ask you one more time to acknowledge those folks. Westminster. When I said, you know, there are a lot of you in this room that could probably roast me pretty well, that would include my brother who was here and my sister and their family who have come from out of town just to see what would happen. I appreciate very much the effort to come see it, so thank you. But I'd like to recognize my wife, Fran, who was undoubtedly an unindicted co-conspirator in the slanderous attacks on me tonight. Fortunately for me, Fran's got a very good sense of humor, and that's why she's still with me after 45 years. Ferris. So Fran, would you please, and certainly last but not least is all of you here tonight. Those of you that are sponsors and bought tickets and came here tonight, I hope you had a good time. But you have made it possible for the club to fund many of the projects that we will have next year. So thank you very much. I'm going to turn it now over to our master, Major Harding, for closing up.
Ladies and gentlemen, that is a grand conclusion to our wonderful evening. Thank you very much for being here.